Welcome to building an e-commerce site using Spring in 24 hours. I'm Casey Doolittle. I'm a Java solution architect for Icon Health and Fitness and a Spring enthusiast. I've been using Spring for a long time, and you can see there my beloved Rod Johnson bobblehead doll who sits on my desk and watches over me as I code.
That's right. I am Phil Dutson. I'm a solution architect for mobile UX and client-side implementation at Icon Health and Fitness, and I'm the author of some mostly dry technical books. I've got listed on the page there. Oh, and I'm being signaled that we've got some crazy echo going on. Hang on a second. Okay, that should be a little bit better. Let's continue on.
So our challenge, why would you ever want to build an e-commerce store in 24 hours? That's a question that we asked ourselves many times during this project. And to be fair, this isn't the first time we've ever done e-commerce. We've done commerce many times in the past. We manage all these sites that you see here. We use a solution called IBM WebSphere Commerce to manage most of those. This project we did a little bit differently, and we actually built a custom implementation of the shopping cart.
We did, yeah.
So the challenge, build a transactional site in 24 hours. One of our requirements that may not be yours is to make it server agnostic. It needs to know that it runs in a server, but it doesn't need to know what server it runs in. We build on Tomcat and deploy to WAS. We need to be able to process orders. We need to be able to manage the inventory. And we wanted it responsive. We only wanted to have to build the application one time and be able to use it on any platform. So a transactional site in 24 hours, one of the key elements of this is communication. Everyone involved needs to be able to have a voice and be heard to make this happen.
Yeah, and this goes beyond just the developers. I mean, this includes the marketing decision makers or the business owners, the designers, if you have any involved, and of course developers and testers.
And if you don't communicate well, really you're not going to be able to meet that deadline. You're not going to be able to do this in 24 hours. So server agnostic. Spring actually brings a lot of tools to the table that make this possible. You can abstract and ask for example, the request. You don't need to know what type of request it is, whether it's an IBM WAS, JBoss, or Glassfish. It doesn't really matter. You just simply ask for that interface, and Spring will inject the appropriate resource. So the challenge of server agnostic really isn't a problem. We've been building server agnostic for quite a while. We have many enterprise applications that are built using Spring, and they're all server agnostic. We can really deploy them to any servlet container.
Yeah, part of the reason why it's so important to make sure that you're server agnostic is so that you can develop anywhere, wherever you are, whatever platform you're using, whether you're using Eclipse or IntelliJ. As long as you have a servlet container, you want to be able to pass that app to it, make sure you can edit it, make sure you can use it, and of course deploy and build it.
And the key to this is really looking for the commonalities. If you're building on Tomcat 7, for example, which is the development platform that we choose to use, and you know that you're going to be deploying to IBM WAS, obviously you can't use Servlet 3. You have to use 2.5. You have to use Java 1.6. So finding those commonalities and coding to that makes this possible. Another challenge was being able to process the orders. We have a separate order fulfillment system. We use SAP. We also have a legacy system called PRMS. Both of those systems can take an order from an outside system, and that's really what we were focusing on here. Is we need to be able to collect the orders and hand them off to someone else for processing. We had a SOAP service for order creation. Without those services in place, we really wouldn't have been able to achieve the 24-hour deadline.
Yeah, it's true. Depending on your own situation, the way that your company works, or the way that your cart works, you may run into some issues. I mean, for us, connecting into this backend system, it's really more of an XML writing process that we'll look at a little bit later.
Another challenge is being able to manage inventory. This was a charity sale that we were building this cart for, and so there was a certain number of machines that had been donated that were to be sold, and then the proceeds from those sales were to be given to this charity foundation. So we needed to be able to manage that inventory exactly. If there was one sold in the physical location, it needed to be updated. So we had to be able to relatively quickly reconcile that stock and make sure that both sides aren't trying to sell the same machine.
You're apparently moving a lot. It's a lot of chopping audio.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, I don't have anything with that. Go ahead.
Also, price adjustments. We wanted to be able to really manage these products and work with them easily. So another challenge was responsive web design.
Yeah, so of course, being more towards the future, I mean, there's a few things you really need to take into consideration when you're building a project like this or a shopping cart like this, and that is that you want your site, your cart, to work on as many devices as possible. And to make that happen, being on the same domain, you're going to have to go either responsive or adaptive. And we chose to go the responsive design route, and we used a little framework I've got out there on GitHub called Base. And what this is it's basically the grid pack framework that I've pulled down and made some modifications, and I've added a sample HTML files that you can open it up and take a look and see how changing columns, moving sidebars and main areas around, and I've added in a few extra fixes like a clear technique to help you lay things out. And we use that as our base analysis. And that was very helpful to us because for this project, being a 24-hour shopping cart, we were not given a full design. There was no design team that sat down and actually gave a lot of considerations other than Casey and myself. I did go talk to the design group, and what they handed me was a printout or a flyer of what they were hanging up around the office and hanging up around town and emailing to people. So the entire design process was me taking the paper that I had and just pulling out the few subtle elements and imagery from that flyer and putting it into the site. And then by using Base, I was able to manipulate it and take the columns and switch them into a single column, or I could make two, and kind of break the site down into rows. It's super important, though, that you remember that everyone's device is going to be different, and trying to define specific sizes like you may have done in the past, or like other frameworks do, can get you into a little bit of trouble. So Base, when you pull it down or take a look at it, you'll notice that it's more divided into screen sizes. So there's small screens, medium screens, large screens, and extra large screens. And that's kind of a different way to look at it. It's not so much pixel perfect, but kind of a span of device size ranges.
As another note, Base is easy enough to implement that I've actually implemented it a couple times, being a Java developer and not a front-end or UX developer, and I really didn't have any problems implementing Base. So our roadmap. Now we know what was required. We started our planning process. Basically, we broke it down. We tried to identify the objects that were involved, create a way to manage the system, recognizing that was going to be important, and then we had to pick and implement the tools that we needed for the job. So identifying the objects, one step was identifying the site flow and what the site looked like.
Yeah, so when you think of an e-commerce site, and this was, again, part of our challenge, a standard e-commerce site is generally made up of some kind of landing or home page. It's generally made up of a category page or category pages, product and specialty pages, whether that's a single item SKU or whether it's something that has a multi-item SKU like an apparel or even a shoe page. And then you've got, a multi-page shopping cart that you're going to try to put them in and give them upsells or cross-sells. And you've probably got an About Us page, a customer service, and you've got all these other pages. So when you're trying to gear something towards the 24-hour mark, the faster, the smaller, the better. Right. So what we opted for was pretty much a category page, and we'll kind of talk about that home page that was added, but you pretty much land on the page that shows you all of our product. We got rid of a product page and just added a description to each product, and then you went immediately to the billing and shipping page, as well as entering in your credit card information, and then you went to a order completion or confirmation page.
So by cutting our flow down like this and defining the flow, we really ended up with 5 pages that we had to build. In addition, an important object is the product. We know that we need to track the inventory and we need to track the price. There are other elements, obviously, like product number, things needed by the fulfillment system, but those are the key elements that we started identifying. And then we decided we needed to build an admin tool. We had to have some way of managing these products that was user-friendly. Knowing that products could be added, removed and the inventory could have changed behind the scenes and without going through the cart. We knew that this was going to be an important tool. So we spent some time building out the admin tool. We made it so we could add and edit products, categories. Even though we didn't build a category page, the main page is actually just a category page that loads multiple other categories that have the products in them. We also were able to set the product availability by this. Security is a concern on an admin type tool like this. We could have built it into the shopping cart and then put some kind of security layer on it. We opted for a separate application entirely, and really our app security came down to you had to be on our domain to run it. You had to run it on your local host because we didn't publish it anywhere. And this is where the database access happened. This is where the setting of the prices and the creation of the products really occurred, was in this admin tool.
Yeah, part of that application security and the way we opted to make that work internally was so that if there was a chance that someone did get a hold of our code or stole a laptop, unless they also stole credentials to log into our network, jump on the VPN, get on the same place as the app, there wouldn't be a way for them to access the data and change it or mess with it in any way.
Exactly. And you might say that, we had 24 hours, so why did we waste time building a tool to write to the database? We could have done all of those writes manually, and that's true. We could have. But none of the time that was spent in the admin tool, I don't look at any of it as wasted time. Everything from the user experience for this admin tool, the GUI that we built for the admin tool, to right down to the actual database writes, got reused in the actual application, in the shopping cart. Some of those things were removed. So that's really all it was we picked up the code, we copied it over to the shopping cart, and then we picked the elements that didn't apply. We don't want them to be able to set prices. We don't want them to be able to write and manage inventory from the cart. So we'd remove those functions from those DAOs, and that's what we did with our admin tool. So really, overall, it was worth the time we spent on it. So our tools. The most important tool is Spring MVC. Without Spring MVC, this would not have been possible. There is my application context file, so you can see kind of what I'm doing. I'm doing classic old school XML configuration. I know we're supposed to be doing Java configuration these days, but I'm behind. So we use XML configuration and annotation-based configuration for our Spring MVC.
Yeah, to point out, if you've never used Spring MVC before, you've never looked at this XML base, there's a large chunk of code in there that you can see start with an MVC tag, and this allows you to very quickly look and see what resources are going to be allowed to just process that don't necessarily need to have logic attached to them. So here you can see that we're using our CSS, images, JavaScript, and other folders that don't need any server-side backend logic in order to serve those files.
We use JSPs to build this application, and we use Spring tag libs to allow us to work in those JSPs, specifically the form tag libs. This let us use repopulate the forms when the form submits had failed, get the data in there back for the users, report errors. This was Phil's first experience with the Spring tag libs, and it went really smoothly. I don't think he had any issues.
Yeah, no, being a WebSphere Commerce user before, we've used struts considerably. We've never really used Spring before. And what was awesome about this is Spring makes things so easy that I didn't even have to ask Casey any questions. Looking right here at this snippet of code we've got, I can tell that I'm in a form, because it starts with form, and I can clearly see what my action that I would normally look for and my method are going to be. So I know that I'm going to go to order address, and I know that that information is going to be sent as a post, so it's not going to be thrown up in the location bar or parameterized so everyone in the world can see it. The only thing that's really new is the command name, and even then, knowing that it's a command name, I know that this form is going to run logic through the order address function, and it's going to extrapolate data from there. The other thing I really want to point out that is useful and amazing about Spring is that down there near the last, the two form elements after a label inside that div, you can see we've got a form input and a form errors. And what's really nice about this is that we can use this information to repopulate the form and even display errors. So this adds some server-side validation. I know that users like to be told up front what's right and wrong, but occasionally client website validation can fail for a number of reasons. And so this is a wonderful fallback, especially in the case where if a mobile user takes the time to fill out an entire form and then hit submit, they want their data to stay there. Because if they do give you information and you lose it in process because there was an error, there's a very good chance that when they come back to that page and see that the entire form has been wiped clean, they're not going to want to fill out that page again. They're just going to want to leave. And if
mobile users are very picky that way.
And if they don't just leave, they're going to make sure to tell every single one of their friends, hey, if you're using a mobile device, this site sucks. So either don't use it or check everything 2 or 3 times before you hit the next button. So by using these Spring form inputs, we can save that data and repopulate the form for them.
And the other advantage is that's really being handled by the server, and it's not being handled by like the local storage in the browser, which has inherent security risks. Speaking of security, we chose to use Spring Security. We use it in the absolute lightest use ever. Really all we're doing with Spring Security is we're forcing the application to make all requests through a secure channel.
Yeah, so part of the reason why we are so into going secure, 2 years ago at Google I/O, they announced changes to the way they wanted the web to work. They wanted everyone to be secure end-to-end. And as part of that, you might remember that they made Google.com and all of the services secure from the start. Before you even logged in, you were switched to secure. I know lots of SEO guys complain about that because they could no longer get as many terms and things. However, the intent was, if you're secure end-to-end, you know that you're always going to be safe. And on top of that, they introduced Speedy, which was a brand new protocol that was built to help take care of a lot of issues that secure HTTP has, which is every time you make a request, you've got to encapsulate that into a secure connection. Well, if you have multiple domains, every single time you switch a domain, you've got to make a new encapsulated process. So by using Speedy, it grabs all of those processes, even if they're cross-domain, bundles the resources into one request, enables header compression between the client and the server, and then shoots all that data down. So it cuts down on your return trip time, and it also cuts down on having to encapsulate every single resource. Now, they've recently just donated Speedy to the Apache Foundation, and you can actually go and grab that now for your Apache servers, and there's also a version available for Nginx if you're currently using that. And one other thing I just wanted to point out is that you might not think that hitting a website up front through standard HTTP and then going secure will have an impact on you, but it does.
This year at Google I/O, they reiterated this desire for HTTPS everywhere. And actually, one of the presenters told the story of how he had been traveling abroad, and at some point his browser had been poisoned to pick up a version of jQuery that had a bunch of custom code in it to pop ads. So he was actually not able to get rid of all of these ad pops that were happening until he cleared his cache and actually re-grabbed the jQuery resource, which would have been avoided had the site never allowed the opportunity for that attack to happen.
So because of that, we recommend going secure from the get-go. If you can end-to-end encapsulate secure, you should be.
And the truth is that these days it's cheap enough that the overhead concerns of being secure are far outweighed by the security involved. It's really important. Do your customers a favor and go secure early and go secure always. So here's my Spring security configuration. Again, you see I'm using the XML configuration. And really all it is whatever you come in on, I want you to be forced to go HTTPS. So that way I know as soon as you made a request to my server, you're going to be secure, and I can rely on the application server to enforce that. You have to have an authentication manager, and you can see that I have one that doesn't do anything.
Right. So what else we wanted to point out is many of you who manage your own web servers probably look at this and go, well, why are we bothering to secure from the app when I could just secure this from Apache or Nginx or out on the front, before it even comes in? The biggest reason why we opted to go for securing in the app was that configuring your front-end servers can be a bit of a headache. It's not always as easy as just going, oh, well, let's just 301 every over to, or everything's not secure, into secure. A lot of server systems have, reverse proxies. A lot of them have DNS filters or proxy setups as well. And trying to get everyone to play nice on the same, request can actually redirect a lot of your browsers and mobile users into a redirect loop, and it can even punish you as far as SEO and SEM are concerned.
Another tool we chose to use is Mongo. Mongo is the database that we chose for this application. As we were considering all the different databases, we looked at Mongo for its speed, its flexibility, and the fact that we had a server cluster already set up. We were using Mongo at the time for all of our reviews, our entire review system on all those sites that you saw earlier. They all feed into a Mongo database. The reason why we can feed them into a Mongo database is because the data is not hugely important to us. Reviews are important, but if we lose one here or there, we're not really that concerned.
World, you're not losing critical customer data.
And now you're saying you guys are building a cart and you're losing critical customer data, which could be true. However, remember that ultimately the order is going to be handed off to another system, and that system is a system of record. So as long as that order creation happens, and I'm not really too concerned about having the order saved in the Mongo database. So really it was about speed and flexibility. Some of the things you need to think about if you're considering speed and considering Mongo is speed and flexibility. Indexing, you need to be sure that you index things that you're going to be querying regularly. Indexing can greatly impact the speed of your requests. And flexibility, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. You can very quickly get yourself into a place where your documents are difficult to work with and therefore useless. And if you can't query them correctly, there's no value to data that you can't get at.
Right. Part of that flexibility stems from looking at a traditional rational database. When you start your planning, you look at which fields you need, what types they're going to be, and then occasionally you might fall into the practice of, okay, I'm going to try to future-proof my database, so I'm going to add 1 to 5 empty fields. I'm going to name them field 1, field 2, field 3, etc. And then I'm going to guess that, okay, I might need a 2,000-character string or a varchar, or I might need an integer that's going to have, three placeholders. And that, it's definitely an idea. I wouldn't recommend it. And when you're using Mongo or an NoSQL system, you can do that stuff on the fly. If you have a database that you've got that you don't have an extra field and you decide suddenly, you know what, I forgot. I need a long description and a short description. So I'm going to go ahead and add a short description. But then the next product you don't, or maybe you add another field called reviews or something else, you can do that. And Mongo will let you do that. But the problem is you're then slowing down your system more and more. So something you absolutely have to be critical and aware of is that even when you're using a NoSQL system such as Mongo, you still need to plan your database out as best you can from the get-go.
Another note is that we don't have write confirmation. You don't know for sure that your write succeeded. So Mongo wouldn't be the right answer if this is supposed to be your system of record. You probably want to look to a more traditional relational database. But if you're like us and this isn't your system of record, then it might work well for you. We felt that it was the right tool for the job. So here's my Mongo configuration. I wanted to take advantage of injecting the Mongo client. I didn't use Spring Data. I probably should have. Chose not to. But I still wanted to only ever create a single Mongo client. So I have 3 servers that I want to talk to. That way I can read from my slaves and not have to read from my master. Try and optimize my configuration there with my cluster. So I built a Mongo client, and then I injected it into all of my resources that were going to use it. So all of my DAOs had the Mongo client injected directly into them. It made it really quick and easy to get up and running. So another tool that we chose was Jackson. You can go download Jackson. We provide the link here. If you're not using Jackson for your REST APIs, you might want to take a look at it. It's really simple. And that's really why we chose it. seriously, all I did was I downloaded the jar files, I put them into my project, and I annotated my method with @response_body. Spring recognizes that I have Jackson in my class path. It uses Jackson to convert that into a JSON string and drop it out. So with that one annotation, which isn't even a Jackson annotation, it's a Spring annotation, that method started returning the JSON representation of my object. That was very handy for us. It let us build really quick REST API. We weren't really going for a full-on REST API when we built this. We were only going for ease of use.
Yeah. The ease of use is more for the client side. It was when I needed product information, a name, a price, a description, do we have it in stock? I could just do a quick get, and in case you could return to me through this service, you could just say, hey, here's your product, or here's the order status of where you've gone. And so, yes, it's not a fully true REST API solution, but it is a fantastic one. Also, if you're curious, if you use a dependency manager such as Maven or Gradle, Jackson does work with both of those and will automatically pull in the files it needs and put them where they need to be.
Yeah, you won't have to manage your own dependencies. It makes it a lot easier to work with. Credit card processing. We don't credit card process. We do, of course, take credit cards, but we offload that processing to a third party. We actually contract with another company. They take the credit cards. When you submit a credit card on one of our sites, we actually send you to them instead of to us. So the benefit here is we never have to handle a raw card. All we ever handle is a credit card token. There are many services that are out there that offer this type of thing. As a developer, when you're building these kinds of things, one of the things that I don't know how many developers are familiar with is this idea of PCI compliance, or what it takes to really transact a credit card. You need to be cognizant of those as you're building your applications, because they can really come back and hurt you as a developer. And even worse is really your users. You know, you don't want to be the next target.
Right, yeah. So something that's super important, and again, because we had 24 hours, we did not have enough time to build a standalone complete order transaction system. But when you do get hacked, because it's going to happen at some point or another, the only thing you want to be able to give out is something that's completely useless. So in this instance, we have tokens from our credit card processor, and those tokens are not good to anyone else. You can't take that token and go to Best Buy and say, I want to buy everything. Here's my credit card. It doesn't work. That token is absolutely useless to Best Buy. It's only good at our store.
And we really recommend that you find and use a third-party system like this, tokenize first. The question that as a developer you should be asking to these systems is, how do you keep me out of PCI scope, or why am I no longer in? Why do I no longer need to comply with PCI compliance? Honestly, the data that we get back from them, we could broadcast it to the world, because it's useless. It really, truly is useless. A couple that do something similar, PayPal, Amazon, Google Wallet. These providers, they hold on to the credit card, and you don't ever actually see the credit card. You never transact with the credit card. They can kind of be a good compromise if you're not wanting to contract with another third party to handle that credit card. But really, the bottom line is, remember that everybody gets hacked, and be prepared for that. So when someone finally hacks us and they get into our data, they're going to be sadly disappointed, because there's no credit cards there. So requirement changes. Anybody who's worked on any project of any size knows that requirements will change while you're building it, and it did. The first change that happened was they wanted to be able to take donations. This was a charity website, as we said, and all of the proceeds were going to go to this foundation. But they wanted to also allow customers to come in and donate from the website. Now, some of the things about a donation, it's not a standard product, and the customer gets to assign the value. So this is kind of a reversal of we can't let them set a price. And ultimately, we also had to make sure that they had our EIN number on the return receipt if they had donated. We were really scared by this requirement when it came down for about 5 minutes before we really thought it through, and Spring really helped make that easy. And then the second thing that happened was they wanted to treat the store like a brick and mortar. They wanted it open when the brick and mortar store was closed, and closed when it was
open when the store was
open, closed when the store was closed. And that was something else that we were like, why would you do that? You probably wouldn't, but that was a request that came down, and so we tried to make it happen. So donations, this is my entire donation code. Really all I did was just to add a detail to the object, or to the order object of donation, and let you put the price in. It was incredibly simple. Like I said, with Spring, this was very easy. If I would have been working on a full enterprise commerce solution such as IBM Webster Commerce, this would have been extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah, trying to insert a product into the proper fields and tables and then allow a user to adjust that price for that product is not something that we would have had the time to accomplish, probably even in 2 weeks. I mean, it would have been a monumental effort.
Right, and with working with Spring, it was just another method. Open close, we use delegating filter proxy for this. This is actually the same filter proxy that Spring uses to service security. And we just created one of our own. As long as you have a filter and it's a bean in the web application context of the same name as the filter name, it'll automatically grab it when that filter is called and run the do filter. So there's our web XML filter logic, filter XML for invoking the filter. There's the actual do filter code from the actual open close filter. Really all we did is say, unless you're going through the order and not on the order add step or asking for a static resource, we're going to redirect you to the close.
Yeah, and to try to explain that, now it goes further than just when the mortar store is open, we need the e-commerce store open, and when it's closed, we need it closed. They actually wanted this to act like a real store. So if you were to walk into a store and pick something up off of the shelf, and as you're walking and you get into line, you then hear over the intercom, hey, the store is now closed, everyone needs to leave. They don't expect you to put your item back and just walk out. No, you're in line, so you're allowed to finish your transaction. So in here you can see some of our logic as how it's put together, is that as long as they're moving through the cart, they're allowed to finish their transaction. Now, if they try to move away from the cart or if they get out of line because they forgot something, well, the store is now closed, so they're unable to continue. So it's kind of a unique idea. This was another one that was a little scary to me originally, but as you can see here, using these open and closed filter, it really wasn't that much of a problem.
Yeah, it was really easy. There are some things I could do differently. I'll talk about those a little bit later that probably would have been better, but this was just a quick, easy way. Again, we had 24 hours, so most of the stuff we did out of desperation or panic, trying to just get it done as quickly as we could. So the past and the future is what we didn't do. Okay, so we didn't do test-driven design and development. So you can hate on us now. We also did not use Spring Boot. We could have used Spring Boot. We chose not to. We chose not to use Spring Data. We actually built all our own DAOs and managed the database manually. That was mostly my choice because I felt like Spring Data wasn't what I wanted right then. Looking back on it, probably should have used Spring Data. Probably would have made my life a lot easier if I would have just gone ahead and implemented that. I did not have the time to review that adequately to do that. We also didn't use Maven or Gradle. I'm not a fan of dependency management or build tools. I like to have my hands on everything in my application, so I always manage my own dependencies.
That being said, it's not that Maven or Gradle are a bad choice. They're a fantastic choice and resource. They are especially useful if you're working in large teams, offshore teams, remote teams, pretty much anything more than a couple of guys. In our instance, again, with the timeline, we didn't have time to really set up a project, get it running and going. I know you're kind of giggling at that, but if you think about it, this was Casey got the project started, checked it into the code repo, I pulled it back down onto my box, and we were both off and running. We didn't really have to do any extra setup. As you've seen from our previous slides, there wasn't a whole lot of crazy that we did. I mean, the most was probably Jackson, which was 3 jars that we threw in the live folder, and we were up and running.
Right.
So I'm not against Maven and Gradle. It's just in this particular timing and constraints, we didn't use it. And the same thing goes with Ant.
Right. There's nothing wrong with build tools or dependency managers if you choose to use them. And it is. It's like Phil says, if they're great if you're more than a couple of guys. Well, we really were literally a couple of guys trying to build this. We had pretty good support staff. We had testers to work on it, designers who kind of worked on it, and business owners who were working on it. But really, the development really came down to the two of us. And I was doing all of the Java side, the Java development, all of the data connections, and so forth, and Phil was doing all the user experience and front-end development.
That's right. And as part of that, I also want to throw out, just in case some of you are curious, no, I did not use Bower as a front-end management tool, and I did not use Gulp or Grunt, even though those are fabulous tools, and I also recommend you looking into those if you're not using them already.
Finally, the Spring Security instead of open-close filter. It would have been a lot easier looking back on this if I would have just created a custom permission evaluator and granted people the access to the store if they've already been, checked, if they already have something in their cart or already been to that part. It would have been really easy to build, and that's probably the way I should have gone. But again, it was time constraint and really the fastest thing to get through the door. The first idea I had on how to handle it, I kind of went with it and dug in to that solution rather than, wishy-washy coming up with a solution and then thinking it through and really coming up with the best solution. That's actually true of most of this project. It was you really had to commit. So it was kind of like you talked about it, you worked it out, we spent some whiteboard time. Once we had the point where we thought we had something that we could make work, we were committed. And from that point on, it was just build that, whatever that would be. So, and the futurists, what we did after this. So really on the heels of this project, they wanted another e-commerce site. We built it, and it's shop.ifit.com. It shares the charity base almost exactly, with a few improvements.
Yeah, the timeline, they felt that they were being very generous with us. They gave us 2 weeks, what they call 2 weeks. So really that's 10 business days. And then I want to throw in that it was over Christmas/holiday break. So really, I feel that I'm being generous when I say 8 days. But we had some improvements. Some of those improvements were client side. For example, we started using handlebars for some of my templating so that I could set up a CMS and allow some of our content managers to change out hero images, call to action buttons, and other things of sale type data that they need to move around.
Another thing we did is we went ahead and fleshed out the REST API. We wanted it to be a lot more robust than it was in the charity site. In charity, it really was, we had order, and I think we could pull product data by the product number. I think that was about all we really had in the charity. We fleshed that REST API out immensely. We started adding products, categories, full order could be pulled using REST. I mean, basically anything we could think of to make available through that REST API we did. And again, it was really simple to do.
Yeah, part of the reason why you want to do that is the way we opted to architect this particular site is that the client can go ahead and request as much product information or category information as possible, get that in a very concise JSON object, and then deconstruct that information so that the product page or the category page can be displayed and constructed. And if you go to shop.ifit.com right now, you can actually see how that's done on the various category pages. And if you click on wearables, you can actually see we've got the iFit Active. That whole page is really thrown together, including the gallery images, by making a request to that database through the REST service to get which pictures go where, how things are done.
But of course, it's not true REST API. There's no right. Again, we have an admin tool. We fleshed out the admin tool, made it a lot more robust, and so we don't actually allow you to ever write data using the REST API. It's really more of a request-based REST. So it's light REST, but again, we really spent a lot of time making that more robust and easier to use. We also added a template engine. We like SiteMesh. You could use TimeLeaf, whatever you choose to use, Magnolia, whatever you really want to use to manage your templates. We like the SiteMesh, so we threw SiteMesh in there. With the charity site, there weren't enough pages to bother with a template. It would have taken longer to build the template and implement the template than it did to code the pages. So we really just coded the 5 pages and called it good. With iFit, with the shop iFit, we needed to be able to template those out. There are a lot more pages involved. It's more of a traditional commerce site.
Right.
So that's it. Thank you to Pivotal for having us here to talk to you guys. We hope that you got something out of it. You're welcome to stalk us online. Phil tweets, I don't, but we both Google+. Thank you. Peter?
No problem. You're welcome. Thanks for being with us today. Got a couple questions teed up. I'm gonna start off with what is my personal favorite of the list. James Freitas asks, does Spring mess up HTML content for Google SEO?
Not in my experience.
Yeah, Spring is all server side, so if it's goofing up your SEO, you're probably doing it wrong. Now, something you may want to look for is duplicate content, things where if you're trying to patch a page together and pull data from the same spot, your meta descriptions, your meta titles, if those things are all identical, then you may get flagged as having, either some black hat in there. You might get flagged as, of course, duplicate content. But Spring itself does not cause any SEO considerations.
Nailed it. Yep. This James Freitas also asks, besides this base, what other CSS frameworks do you recommend on other projects?
Well, it really depends on what you're doing. So if you're doing a personal project and there's a lot of things that you like, some plugins, you like a certain hamburger menu style, you enjoy, like Bootstrap has a really nice photo window that they use, or a modal window, sorry. If you're going for that kind of a thing and you don't have a lot of front-end experience or you don't have designers, then yeah, you should look at Twitter Bootstrap, you should look at Zerp Foundation, and you should absolutely look at Pure CSS, which I believe is from Yahoo. Personally, we don't use any of that because we did build an e-commerce site using Bootstrap, and it was such a headache and a mess managing our CSS that we won't touch it again because we ended up with 32 different breakpoints, and some of them are nested. So it made debugging a giant headache. So now instead of following a big framework, we start with base on all of our projects, and then we just move up from there based on screen size and design. I'm also a fan of, stretch your site until your design's about to break and insert a breakpoint and then keep going.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, guys. Let's see. Shiv Kumar asks, are these URLs, the GitHub URL, Spring URL, the SPDY, Speedy URL, and the other URLs mentioned in these slides available for reference? So I think he just wanted to see all the URLs and maybe in one slide. So I know you got most of them right there, but perhaps
we don't have a slide that has all of them together. However, this slide deck is up on Speaker Deck right now. You can go and look for Casey or me. We both uploaded it, and you can go through and see the URLs from there. Otherwise, hit us up on Google Plus or hit us up on Twitter. Hit me up on Twitter, and I'll be happy to send you any links you need.
Awesome. Thanks, gentlemen. Yeah, that's funny. Actually, I saw the Google alert come in last night that your presentation was posted. That was cool. Let's see. Okay, so we got another question here. George Smith asks, hey, is there a reason that you didn't use another of your, is there a reason that you didn't use Grails for this?
Yeah, it's actually experience. I don't have any Grails experience. I've been wanting to get involved in Grails development, but again, understand our shop is incredibly small. I think we have 7 developers, and so we manage a tremendous number of applications and websites, and due to that, we really don't have a whole lot of time to spend on new technology. So we're always kind of a little bit behind.
Yep, especially when you have a 24-hour deadline, which is kind of ridiculous. Yeah. Let's see. John Considine asks, why not use Spring HadeOS, which uses Jackson in turn?
We just didn't. I'm sure that would be a good solution. Again, like we said, actually in the last presentation, I think Peter mentioned it, and I think it's very true. We just try to take a very pragmatic approach. These are the tools that we had in our box, and so we pulled out the tools that we felt were appropriate, that we could get the fastest tool to get us done. 24 hours is really a short period of time to build anything. And trying to build something that you're going to have multiple users on, it becomes very difficult. And really, you're not looking for the best tool. You're looking for a tool. Kind of the hammer is everything's a nail.
Yeah, you're looking for the tool you already know and what's going to be what you're most versed with, because it's going to be the fastest when you have a gun to your head.
Exactly. And we didn't mention it, but we should mention that the charity sale was actually quite successful, more successful in-house than it was online. But we did have users transacting on the site, and we did do quite a few sales through the website.
Awesome. Oh, well, good. There, that's the result, right? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, nice. Kind of a similar piece of feedback from Harish. Hey, this would have been faster if kind of thing, and I suspect you're pretty much going to give the same answer. So, I'm not going to go through all that, but basically he was just saying that he's found that Spring Boot has been really awesome for him.
Yeah, and I would agree. Actually, I'm really excited about the Spring Boot project. Had I had longer than 24 hours, I actually did look at Spring Boot. We seriously considered going that way. We seriously considered using Spring Data. And really, it all came back to, I just don't have time. If I run into something that I'm not familiar with, I'm not going to have time to fix it.
Yep. Okay, so sorry, another one of those, kind of comments. So anyway, moving on. Let's see. I'm not sure what slide you were on, but this came in around 10:36. So this is kind of towards the end, I think. Peter Goodman asks, could you repeat the name of the last tools I mentioned? You mentioned, I missed the names. Thanks.
We can go back to the tools page.
Yeah, maybe that was it. There we go. Yeah, maybe some of these.
We got, let's see, where are we at? Well, no. Did we not?
We talked about them individually.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we didn't list them, but the tools that we used were basically Spring MVC, Spring Security, Spring JSP tags, security configuration, Mongo, Jackson, and we had an off third-party credit card processor.
Okay. Let's see. Here's one we haven't seen before. Clearly, Jonathan Hoops was paying attention. Awesome. He asks, maybe I missed this, but what did you use for creating builds?
Oh, well, we just created them manually. We just exported the WAR files and dropped WAR files. That's how we did our builds. Again, we didn't use test-driven design, test-driven development, so we didn't have to worry about which environment we were working on. We were kind of always working on live. Part of that speaks to the time frame. We just heads down tried to build as fast as we could, and every build was just simply an export of a WAR file.
Right. To add on to that, we're not using any continuous integration. And we didn't, again, no test-driven development, but we did use live testers, live human testers. It was the weirdest probably test sequence we've ever done. We would complete a module, and then we would tell them, hey, this page or this section of the page is complete. Please test this for functionality. And we'd have them let loose trying to make sure that it would function and not break. And if they clicked the add to cart button 3 times in a row, the page didn't explode. The whole build process was just an exported WAR file.
And we're not
Gotcha.
really advocating for that. We're not anti Gradle or anti Maven or anti Ant. Whatever tools work for you, that's great. But that's what we did.
Yep. Yeah. Honestly, when I get that, I have to come up with a customer demo in 24 hours. I've been guilty of doing that myself on occasion too. So yeah, no, I hear you. It's tough when you have crazy circumstances like that. Let's see. Shiv Kumar asks, could you please mention again the front end technologies used?
Yeah, sure. Basically, it's pretty standard. We use the jQuery library. Even though we're used to using IBM WebSphere Commerce, which heavily leans on Dojo, we chose jQuery because it's lighter, it's faster, and I wrote 3 books on it. So we're pretty familiar with that one. And then as far as the CSS goes, again, we have a lot of e-commerce sites that we've used before. CSS, sorry. And so we leverage that experience. And part of that is the other programmers we have, the other 5 guys, are very familiar with our CSS. They're very familiar with jQuery. And so if one of us had to, pass off the project or got hit by a bus around hour 13, someone could jump in and still go with it. So for CSS, it was just Base. We now use Sass, so it's a Sass-flavored version of Base. And jQuery for your JavaScript, otherwise it's vanilla. And then now we use Handlebars, which is a great little front-end templating system because we were toying with implementing Ember, but just decided to go with Handlebars.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I was just looking this up in my notes. One of our engineers went to JSConf a while ago, and he mentioned a CSS framework that I had never heard of before that he said, a couple people were excited about it. It wasn't Ember. And I was trying to go back and look that up.
It's probably Angular.
No, it definitely wasn't Angular. No, in fact, that they were saying that at JSConf there was starting to be some anti-Angular sentiment, just because I think there's a feeling that it's great. Because JSConf is kind of like the tip of the JavaScript sword, right? These are not necessarily representative of the rest of the world, right? These guys are like, the tip, the tip of the spear here in JavaScript, and so, but yeah, they were kind of not super happy with AngularJS either, just because they felt like it wasn't really architected very well, and it kind of falls over once you hit a certain point. But there you go. It was called Inuit CSS. That was another CSS framework that one of our engineers said when he went to the conference, said that there was some cool buzz about. So possibly something to check out. I have no idea who these guys are, and I have no vested stake or anything like that. It was just interesting. Dheeraj Kumar asks what IDE you guys were using.
We built it all in Eclipse.
Had a feeling.
Yeah, we actually used Juno. We just barely upgraded to Luna.
Yep.
We played a little bit with IntelliJ, and just as Casey mentioned, where he likes to have his own arms elbow deep in what he's doing in his dependencies, we don't lean on IntelliJ very much, just because it likes to guess what you're going to do and then import things based on what it thinks you want. So Eclipse is where we're at.
Yeah, I much prefer manually managing my dependencies, and that's just kind of a personal preference that I need to get over. But that's the way it is. We do use Eclipse. We did not use the Spring Tool Suite. Nothing against that tool. I actually love it. It's a fantastic tool. But it's just a matter of, that's kind of our regular development environment. Doing a lot of things with struts and so forth, I like to have one environment that I can pull any project and work on it. So that really boils down to just base Eclipse. I don't put a whole lot of add-ons onto it either.
Yep. Very good, guys. Let's see. Shiv Kumar asks again, is there any role-based authentication that you guys are doing?
Not in this project. Again, like I said, I would have probably been better if I would have used that to manage the store being open and closed. That would have actually been really simple to implement. But at the time, we kind of tossed it around a little bit. I was like, I bet I could build a filter that would handle that, and so that's what we did. So right now, the Spring Security implementation is exclusively for forcing secure. That's all it did. It would, as soon as you made a request to the server would force you to go secure, and that's all Spring Security is being used for. We did consider, future development, and certainly with the Shop iFit platform, still planned for future development is registered shoppers, being able to record, the shopper's experience and keep their address information. And if we ever did something like that, we would certainly implement some roles. But in this project, we didn't.
Gotcha. Alrighty. Let's see. Elias asks, what tech are you using to index the data?
Just Mongo, actually. We just build Mongo indexes and query the data that way. For the most part, the data, like we said, was really light. We didn't do a whole lot of heavy stuff. We did everything almost exactly as you would do if you were trying to get done as quickly as you could. That's why, our code pieces that we felt were different, we tried to put in the slides. But other than that, I mean, anybody would probably write fairly similar code.
And, obviously a little bit, easier because you could toss the credit card processing off on the SAP, right? Or the fulfillment anyway. So,
exactly. Not having to fulfill. And the third-party credit card processor, those kinds of things really pay off well when you start trying to do things like this.
Right. So you don't even really need to worry too much about indexing the data or doing anything crazy, with Mongo, right? Okay.
Just basically index on the product number so that you can pull the products quickly. Index on the categories so that you can pull the categories quickly. Other than that, I think that was it. We were done there.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense if that was if you knew that query was going to be coming. Yeah, index for it. Exactly. That's a good point. Ivan asks, so what have you used for kind of a state machine process definition? What would you use if you had more time? Very interesting. I like that question, Ivan.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Let me read it. Yeah, no problem. Let me read it again, and then if it's not clear, Ivan, if you're still on the line, you can just clarify in the Q&A window. So Ivan asks, what have you used for kind of a state machine, process definition? What would you use if you had more time? Why don't we ask him to clarify that in that case?
Yeah, more.
I could tell by the dead silence on the other end of the line, but that needed a little more clarification. So Ivan, if you're still on the line, feel free, just pop in something in the Q&A window there. A little more clarity on what you're looking for. Holy cow, there's still a lot of questions. Let's see. A lot of people asking for the source code. I think you guys already talked about that, right?
We did kind of mention the source code. The problem we have, and we can put something together, but because this was just throw it together as fast as you can, there's something such as database connections that would be missing, or we'd have to comment a lot that said, hey, add your database connections here. The other problem is, since we chose to use filters over user roles, you might get the code and get confused on what is best practice versus what is mad scramble.
Right, and certainly we're not advocating that what we have is best practice.
Got it. Oh, here's one I haven't heard this question in years. Imdad Sumru asks, is Spring better than Struts?
I have actually been using Struts for quite a while. We have many applications of our legacy applications that are using Struts. We chose to go with Spring because of how simple Spring makes it to work with. Another thing that Spring really brings to the table that Struts left was you can pick what you want to use. I don't feel like I have to implement an entire Spring application. Obviously, I mean, you look at what we've shown today. We clearly just picked the pieces that we wanted out of the Spring garden, so to speak, and made what we wanted. And that's really something where Struts, I've always felt like it wants you to do so much more with the Struts framework. I always feel like Struts is so heavy on my application. Everything that I implement in Struts is Struts specific. My Struts actions are always Struts actions. They can't possibly be anything else. When I build with Spring, everything is simply Pojo, and I can really do anything I want with it. There's no. I just feel like Struts tries to be more of that secret sauce or that special ingredient where Spring really tries to just provide a quality framework to build in. So my personal opinion, and it's only mine, is that Spring is better. I wouldn't choose anything else.
Oh, thanks, guys. Let's see. Right. Jat asks, for handling payments in a shopping cart, I believe you're recommending not to go through server-to-server communication between the server and the payment provider, ?
Yeah, I would say that he is mostly accurate. What we're advocating is going to a third-party provider to in some way tokenize or collect your user data so that you don't ever have to. The server-to-server communication, the way ours works is we get a token back immediately from the user. Again, that token is completely useless to anyone off of our network. We then turn around and we pass server-to-server to make the authorization for the credit card transaction. All of that communication, none of that matters because again, you're working with a token that means nothing. And that's really the key there. Try and avoid your PCI scope and make sure that you're outside of it if you can. And, that's kind of what we try and do too. So I think, yeah.
Got it. Sorry, I shouldn't have read that question because that guy already left. So my apologies. Vikas Goal asks, did you look for any Spring alternatives?
We looked at doing it with Struts for about half a second. No, seriously, we did consider Struts as the framework. Again, this was the first that we built that was Spring MVC from front to back. We have many applications that are Struts and Spring mingled together. Again, relying on some of that experience from IBM Commerce. Struts is a familiar framework. Ultimately, Spring we felt like was the better framework. So that's really kind of where we were looking at. We considered building this on Commerce. We realized that there was just no way we could possibly get a store up on Commerce in the 24 hours. We estimated it would take at least 3 weeks to get that up. So we just decided kind of to stick build it and felt like Spring was the right framework.
Guys, I'm going to start speaking up speed because the list of questions is scrolling off into infinity. It's unbelievable. Where was your site demo again? What was that site called?
The best place to see, it's not exactly what we did for charity, but it's close enough, is shop.ifit.com.
Shop.ifit? Shop.ifit.
Yep, IFIT.
Yep, very good. Okay. Do you have any code samples? I think we talked about that already, guys. Let's see. Rajesh Sharma asks, how do you handle the scalability and security of the app?
As far as scalability is concerned, it really was a matter of audience. We looked at how many people we were going to have, and you know what? One server was going to serve it. Based on even if our entire community went and hit it, we'd only have like 20,000 users. We felt pretty confident that we could carry that.
And the Mongo database was clustered.
Mongo database was clustered, so we didn't feel like we were going to run into a problem with data writes or data reads. So that's really our scalability consideration. We could have built differently and built more for scalability, but it just wasn't a concern.
Yep. Les Hartzman asks, any reason you didn't use Java config?
Yep. It all goes back to experience. I knew that if I was working with the XML config and the annotation-based configuration, I've done that many, many times. Very comfortable there.
Okay. Let's see. I'm not sure what he was what slide he was on when he said this, but Amin asks, could we use Jersey plus Spring Security instead of Spring MVC plus Spring Security?
I'm going to say yes. I don't think that Spring Security really requires anything. I mean, we've used Spring Security on Struts applications before, and it integrates just fine. I mean, all Spring Security really does is sets up an application context and a filter that intercepts and redirects. So I'm going to say yes. I don't know why that would be a problem, but I'm not familiar enough with Jersey to be an authority on that.
Jersey is the JAX-RS implementation. Is that correct?
I'm thinking so, yeah.
Okay. I think people have done that before. So, I mean, there's a good InfoQ article on it. I think there's an InfoQ article on getting that done, or maybe I think it's a Matt Rabel blog, if memory serves, because I'm pretty sure I remember him blogging about using Jersey with Spring Security. I could be going nuts, but I would do a couple of Google searches. I'd be surprised if they didn't allow you to do that. It's just since Jersey and Spring MVC kind of both take a different approach to how they do RESTful APIs. I think Spring Security kind of integrates more deeply with Spring MVC, surprise, surprise, right? As opposed to something like Jersey. So just a thought. But I'm pretty sure you can do it. I've seen some blog posts about that as well. Let's see. Okay, so we have another couple questions of why did you choose this and not that. I'm going to skip those for now, just because I think we've kind of repetitively continued to answer that. Hey guys, we had some time pressure. We really, we had some time pressure. We had an insane amount of time pressure, and
right.
that meant that we really could only choose things we already knew really well.
Exactly. And the other thing with that is don't think that we're trying to say this is the right way to do it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I'm going to come back to some of those if there's still time. Let's see. How did you manage the workflows like registration and order processing flow? Why didn't you? Oh, okay. Sorry, this was another why didn't you use X question, but he was saying, why didn't you use Spring Webflow? Anyway, sorry about that. I didn't see that initially.
All right. And actually, all we did was the order itself was a Spring managed bean. It was a Spring session managed bean. And we just simply checked the flow to make sure that the order had been through the steps that we wanted it to be through. And that's how we managed the flow. Why we didn't use Spring Webflow, we've answered that.
Got it. Rohan Lobo asks, could we get a quick look at the final charity site that was developed, or is that not public?
It is public, and if you go to it right now, you'll get hit by the close filter and sent to the close. It's actually at foundation.iconfitness.com, but it's right now it's not open. Yeah, exactly. The brick and mortar's not open, so we're not selling anything right now. We will be opening it again when the charity sale comes around again. Basically, at this point, we'll just repopulate the products and start over and run it again, basically the same way we did this year. But right now, it's just closed.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Did you evaluate an open source shopping cart or to modify an existing CMS shopping cart? And if you did, what was the reason to choose Spring and do it from scratch?
We did evaluate. Again, like we said, we've got a lot of experience in IBM WebSphere Commerce. We thought about doing it in IBM WebSphere Commerce, but really it takes you about 2 weeks to get a presence open using WebSphere Commerce. So that just wasn't a good option for the time constraint. We looked at like OpenCMS to manage the CMS. We looked at
Magento cart.
Magento.
There were several other shopping cart solutions. However, they all suffered from the same problem. We had 24 hours, and we could either grab an off-the-shelf product, figure out how to modify it, and then try to use the last 3 hours we had to get it to store up. Or we could use what we knew, use the parts and pieces of Spring to figure out how to put it together and get the shop done.
Yeah, so ultimately we just felt stick building with Spring was faster, and I think that the results say that it was.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Let's see. Just so you guys know, so the audience knows, there's a number of there's an open source framework. I think it has a freemium one. It's called Broadleaf Commerce, and it's built on Spring MVC. So if you guys are familiar with Spring MVC and you're looking for an open source e-commerce solution, I would start with Broadleaf as a general recommendation, but take that for what it's worth, because general recommendations are really only worth the paper they're printed on, because there are very few general situations. FYI, folks, for you in the line, if you're already kind of down with Spring MVC, you're good with that. That's a great open source framework to start with, or at least include in your evaluation list. Again, we have no stake in Broadleaf Commerce. It's just what our users have told us they've been successful with. Okay, let's see. Question on what the IDE and build tool used was. I think we responded to that already, D-Raj. They were using just plain Eclipse and no build tool. They were just doing exploded WAR file and WAR file development. Same thing from Rajesh. How to deploy this app once the dev was over? Same thing, right? Exploded WAR file. You were just literally,
dropped it to WAS and system. We were done.
Okay. Sorry, I'm picking up speed here a little bit. Vu Tran asks, I'm looking for a path to migrate from a shopping cart project that was built with Maverick framework. Would you recommend to go the route you went?
I would definitely look at it. Stick building your own shopping cart is not really hard. And some of these tools that have been mentioned, like Spring Flow and Spring Data, some of these things could actually make it easier than what it was for us. And we were able to accomplish it in 24 hours. So the actual effort involved in stick building your own shopping cart is not high. However, with that being said, I would also jump back to when we were talking about credit card processors. If you're not using a third-party processor and you are inside of PCI scope, that needs to be a consideration as you're building.
Yep. How much pizza and coffee monsters did you eat or drink while doing this? Just kidding.
I don't think the monster ever stopped flowing.
Yeah, I think we were drinking, in my case, rock stars.
I had to include that question. I had to include that question from Jonathan Hoops. I just thought it was way too apropos. Thank you, Jonathan. If I could send you a T-shirt for asking that question, I would, because that was awesome. Let's see. Do you plan to use VeriSign certificates for your HTTPS requests? From VJ.
You know what? I don't think that the foundation is a VeriSign because that's a star cert. So it's basically, it verifies any domain that's on iconfitness.com. And since it's a subdomain, it's foundation.iconfitness.com that we use. I don't think that we use the VeriSign cert for that. You really don't need a VeriSign. You can use any approved third-party signer.
Okay. Got it. Here's a good question. There's another guy I would give a T-shirt to if I could. Biswajit Barman asks, did you generate an invoice after the order was submitted completed? There we go. I like that one.
Actually, that's a good question, and the answer is no, we didn't, because all of that handling, all that invoice handling, it was actually on the SAP system. So all we were trying to do was front end an order creation system. So all this did was generate orders. It handed them off to our system of record, in this case SAP, to actually fulfill those orders. So that system was then responsible. We had an authorization for the credit card, and that system was responsible for creating the invoices, settling, et cetera. One thing we did have to do is when they donated money, we had to include our tax data for them so that they could take that receipt. They could print out the receipt and they could turn that around and use it on their taxes as a deduction. That's really the only thing that we had to do that was different. Otherwise, they were just order verification. Yeah, we got your order, and the other system picked it up. We didn't even send order confirmation emails because the other system would send the order confirmation emails to the customer when the order was actually created. So that's how we handled invoicing. Also, certificate question. The certificate that we were using is actually signed by DigiCert, not VeriSign.
Okay.
You could use VeriSign. We just don't because they're more expensive.
Got it. Okay, here's another why did you not use this question. Let's see. So what are your thoughts about Spring Webflow? From its description, it fits for shopping, booking applications. I think we covered this already. Yeah, I think we covered this already, but do you want to say anything about Spring Webflow that you didn't already? Go for it. If not, we can move on.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, Josh Schmidt, yes, definitely, great use case for Spring Webflow. There's just, that's not what they were already familiar with in this particular project. So, same thing, Youssef Badar, asking about, did anyone consider Spring Roo? Probably could have achieved the same in a few hours. Sure, if they were already familiar with it, which they weren't. So, moving on.
In addition, on Spring Roo, I'm notoriously bad for allowing things to be generated for me. I don't like Roo simply because it makes code.
Yep. Yeah, that's why a lot of people like Boot as an alternative. It's a style thing. Some people like the generated code, some people don't.
Exactly. I got no problem with it, but I'm not gonna use generated code. Yeah, I'm just a
totally. Yep. I think you're not alone on that one. I think really the market these days and the industry seem to have kind of swung away from that and more towards the sort of convention over configuration kind of boot approaches. But there's still valid use cases for cogen and
yeah, certainly. A proof of concept or something like this would have actually been a great use. Proof of concept, or building something where you got no time. Those are both great uses for generated code. But again, I'm kind of a code snob.
Let's see. Why not? Emad asked why you guys didn't use Timeleaf. I think we've dispensed with that. Actually, I was going to skip that anyway. Sorry. Harish asked, do you recommend MongoDB over MySQL? And it's funny. It makes me think of one of those computer-generated meme sites where these two little cartoon characters were arguing over MongoDB versus MySQL. I don't know if you guys have seen that one that goes on for like a half an hour, and MongoDB guys just keep going, I'm web scale. I thought it was hilarious. Anyway,
we've seen that one. That's one of our favorites. We have no problem with SQL over Mongo. Actually, I think they're both great tools, and they both have fantastic use cases. I think that our use case here, where we really don't, I don't want to say that we don't care about the data, but the data integrity is not our first concern. I think that kind of speaks more to the use of MongoDB. If you care a lot more about your data, if this is your system of record, then I would never consider. I wouldn't even consider MongoDB in a place where this is going to be my order system of record.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, I'm kind of going back and forth trying to answer some of the other simple questions, like where's the PowerPoint, stuff like that, while you guys are talking. So forgive me if there's a little bit of a lag here. Did you send any email confirmation another question, a good question from BizWadget Barman. Did you send any email confirmation to the users? If yes, what framework would you use?
We didn't send email confirmations from this. Again, we offload the order to the system of record SAP, and SAP actually, when that order is generated in SAP, was sending the email confirmations to the customers, telling them that the order had been created. Because at that point, it really had. When we took the order, it was an order in the abstract, so to speak, so we didn't have to worry about that. We have other systems where we have, and we just use Java Mail. We also have used a product called, now I can't think of it, Strong Mail, to send emails like that too. Really, they both work.
Yep. Harish asks for some recommendations on good third-party credit card processors.
I'll go ahead and plug the one that we use. We use a company called Paymetric. I love their product. We actually just barely went through another round of shopping. We talked to a lot of providers. Like there's one called CMS. There's a lot of different credit card providers. We looked at Braintree. We looked at I'm trying to remember some of the other ones that we looked at, but we went through a large number of these third-party providers. And really, we came back and we said we want to go with Paymetric. And the tools that they offer is what was important to us. We wanted this ability to offload our PCI compliance responsibility. We don't want to be inside a scope, and they allowed us to deliver that. CMS offers it. Braintree does not. If you use a payment provider like Braintree, you're still inside of scope. So really, any one of them is fine. You got to look at how much they're going to charge you to use the credit card processing, because credit card processing is inherently expensive. So you got to consider that as you're building it, and how much that's worth to you to stay out of scope. And that's the question that you need to be asking your providers. Is you need to be saying, how are you limiting my scope? Am I still inside of PCI scope? If you're still inside of PCI scope, you might want to consider that. Because again, when you get hacked, when we get hacked, it's going to be like, hey, just another day at work, because it won't matter. There is no viable data to get.
Right. This essential point right there. Yep. So quick aside, guys. I just thought of a way for you guys to generate some interesting web traffic for yourself. I'm going to invite you to make a guest blog post on the Spring blog and do your top 10. Do a blog post where you compare the different payment metrics, and maybe update it every 6 months or something like that. If you had your top DJ chart, right, of different payment providers, sounds like that would be a super valuable resource to other people in the community, and we'll get you guys some good exposure. So just food for thought there. We'll talk about it later, but I could see that being super useful.
That would be interesting
for you guys.
And when we when we're doing this too, I mean, that's something that we have to go through on a fairly regular basis. So that might be a good fit.
Exactly, yeah, because you were saying you do it all the time, so it just seems like it might be kind of a fun, Casey and Phil's, top 10 payment provider list kind of thing. Anyway, so Cyril George asks, were you able to handle a scenario where 100,000 users were hitting your website simultaneously?
No. One of the problems is exposure. Even if our entire community would have hit it, we would have like 60,000 people hitting it.
Between 60 and 80.
So even if every single person in our community would have hit it, we would have never hit that. Interestingly enough, anytime you have bargains like we had for the charity sale, all the donated equipment was being sold really relatively cheap. We had people hitting us from like Oregon, and I mean, I don't know how they found it, but they did. And so really, we never had to have that.
Got it. Okay. By the way, you guys are setting a record for the longest Q&A stretch, and we still have 162 people on the line, which is incredible. So this is pretty insane. Did you guys use an ORM to access the database? I think the answer was no, right?
We didn't. We wrote kind of our own ORM that mapped it from JSON and back to JSON, but it was crude at best. We probably should have used Spring Data and allowed that to manage those objects, but we didn't.
Got it. Elias asks, if possible, could you talk a little bit more about how the tokenization is used in this application?
Sure. Really, it's way simple. When you hit the credit card processing page, and if you go to shop.ifit.com, you can actually see this in action. You get to the credit card processing page, and that submit isn't actually going to our server. It's going to go to our third-party provider. They're going to take that credit card and they're going to tokenize it. Now, I have no idea how they do that. I don't want to know how they do that, because if I knew, then I might be accused of stealing credit. I don't know. I don't want to know how they do that. All I know is that when they take that credit card, what they hand me back, they redirect the user back to me, and they hand me an encrypted, lightly encrypted response that I can then decrypt to see that tokenized credit card. Now, when I say lightly, I mean it really is lightly encrypted. You can see it's in the parameters of the request that they redirect me back to my site. Now, to the user, this is almost seamless. They don't even see it. But that step of going to their server in between my server, what I'm getting back has no meaning to anyone in the world. And that's what the token is. I mean, that's really what it's all about, is getting that token from that third party.
Got it. Let's see. I think we answered this already. VJ asked if you plan to use VeriSign or other certificates for your HTTP. I think we answered that one already. What was the name of the company again?
Oh, no, I've forgotten it.
That's okay.
No, DigiCert.
DigiCert. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and really, you can use anything. I mean, you can get certificates from GoDaddy for like $10 these days.
Right. Actually, he left the session, so let's move on. It just says he's gone and he won't hear our answer anyway. So, did you, Sanjay asked if you felt that SiteMesh was easier than Tiles? Haven't looked at SiteMesh yet as a templating engine.
We originally used Tiles probably 6 years ago,
yep.
And we migrated to SiteMesh, and we've never looked back.
Yep. SiteMesh is super easy. Just the implementation and the way that it works, way simple. In fact, I choose SiteMesh over TimeLeaf. I've considered using TimeLeaf, and every time it comes back to SiteMesh is so simple.
Oh, nice. That's cool feedback. Okay, because generally I hear the Spring engineers recommend TimeLeaf, but
I looked at it, and it looks like a fantastic product.
Their general situations and general recommendations are, like I said earlier, worth the paper they're printed on, right? So, Himkar asks, does your app provide full order pricing and catalog management, like calculating the sales price, list price, and everything?
It does. It doesn't calculate the list price. Actually, we just simply input that. It's just one of the data elements is pulled along with the product, but it does manage that. Another thing that it does is tax management. We go out, we shop the tax rates, see if tax is applicable to that order based on where the customer is and where we are. So it does manage all those things.
Okay. Let's see. Why are you not using the credit card token, as you are not having any login screen, or is the token used only for one-time checkout?
The token is technically part of the process of when we get to the system of record, SAP, we need to use that token to pass it back to our payment provider just to actually reconcile.
Yeah, to settle the transaction. So we basically are using the token as a kind of credential on the SAP service. Really, other than that, we didn't have registered users. We were all about you're only going to buy once type of an idea, especially on this charity sale.
Wow, my God, questions are still coming in. This is ridiculous. Okay, guys, we're gonna have to call it at some point here and let these poor guys go back to work. How much more time do you guys have? I mean, seriously, there's another page full of questions. This is unbelievable. Why don't we give it 5 more minutes and then call it? How does that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay, and then folks, if you have more questions, which you clearly do, why don't you hit up Phil? You're going to love me for this, but why don't you hit up Phil on Twitter?
I always thought Phil. I love that answer.
And he is at Dutson PA, which I will make it a point to follow you, my friend. Let's see. So a couple more questions. Let's see. Okay, yeah, more things about the source code. Oh my God, you guys developed this for 24 hours nonstop without sleeping. Wow. Have you guys looked at Drupal e-commerce? Is this code running locally? Can we see it? Yeah, we a lot of questions on that. We know. What different? Here we go. Elias asked, what difference between using Spring Web? Wait, sorry. This is another. Why didn't you use this technology? Okay. Yeah, a couple more of those. Verifier Diraj Kumar wanted to make sure, so your integration with your SAP system was via SOAP over HTTP. True, false?
False. We had a SOAP service that was that sits in front of an XML drop. Really, SAP just picks up an XML file, reads it into the system, and generates an order from it. So we don't actually talk directly to the SAP system with the SOAP service. Also, the SOAP service was HTTPS. Not that it matters. It's on our network. It's entirely, there's no middle in between us and the SOAP service that does that. But it is still secure, and ultimately we talk to the SAP system through an XML file, not through the SOAP request.
So it's really a bit more of a batch file feed, because a guy right next in line, Vic Harangi, was asking, hey, did you talk right to SAP ERP, or was there a CRM system that you were talking to? And it sounds like you just kind of did a batch file flat file feed by
exactly.
XML. So okay. And I guess what was behind Diraj's question was, did you use any framework for skeleton stubs? And the answer obviously there is no. If you're not actually using SOAP, you're not going to use the skeleton stub framework. So answer there is no.
It might be noted too that we do have a duplicate of the service, the SOAP service that we use to drop the XML files. So we are actually able to hit a dev version of that doesn't drop the files direct to SAP. So we can drop files, evaluate, and make sure that the files are going to work on SAP. And we do that and then manually load those onto SAP to verify that they are good files before we went live with it, so to speak.
Got it. How is testing planned and executed along with development? So now comes you get to tell them about the three guys that were sitting there hammering on your application.
You want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we broke it up modular. Casey was working on the server side. I was working on the client side. And then we had, three other guys sitting next to us. And I would be like, okay, I am finished with the first page. Take a look at it, but don't try to add anything to the cart yet. And they would, load it, and then they'd load it on their phone, and then they load it on their tablet, and then they would come back and tell me something was broken, or they'd click the button that I told them not to click anyway, and then I'd tell them not to click the button again, and we'd have to recreate their session. So really, the testing was just mad scramble. We tested piecemeal as we got each page done, and then once we said we were done, we had them start all the way over, brand new sessions as customers and go all the way from beginning to end, and then we had to close the store and make sure that none of them could be in the store. We had to make sure that if they were in their car, they could finish checking out. It was a very intensive, probably only 2 or 3 hours at the very end of the sprint. All of us, just beat to death trying to work on this.
Another thing is during development, we would have situations where I'd be working on logic and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to close the cart. And we worked entirely on the live database, the database that we ultimately deployed to. There was mixed on that when we probably should have not done that, but we did. And so there were times when I'd be like, okay, I'm closing the cart, and Phil would be like, no, give me 10 minutes. And so I'd be like, okay, 10 minutes would pass, and I close the cart, and I'm happily marching on working, and now I've just derailed Phil, and he's now 20 minutes behind because he had to wait for me to finish working on the closed cart. It was an interesting testing experience. Some of the tools that made that doable are JRebel. JRebel was integral to that experience. Being able to change the Java code and immediately see the results of that change. I know Peter mentioned a Spring product that does a similar function. Do you want to go ahead and mention that again, Peter?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sort of. Spring Loaded kind of does some basic dynamic class reloading, and it's sort of free and open source. JRebel is definitely like the Rolls Royce. But if your needs aren't that great and you just need some basic stuff, it's free. You can get Spring Loaded for free. I think we all acknowledge that JRebel is kind of the Rolls Royce, the best in class, solution there for the dynamic class reloading.
Yeah, I'm going to say if you're doing Java development without JRebel, you're doing it wrong. There's very few things that I think I'm doing right, and that's one of them. So.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. I think last question. My God, guys. Wow. Okay. This is more of a comment, actually. If someone accesses the token and guesses your third-party credit card processor, it would still be a security risk as they could spoof a request to the third-party credit card service with that token.
Absolutely true. they could spoof the request to the third-party credit card system. However, that request is tied to my account. So they just barely authorized a card for me. They can't settle that anyway. It has literally no value to anyone but me. So while he's right, if they were able to get my token, they could turn around and ask my credit card provider to authorize that token. But the only person who that token works for is for me. Right. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Go ahead and authorize that card all over the place, and we're going to find out. We're going to change our security parameters, and we'll be right back. So again, like I said, that the real true value there in that third party is that to what end? What are you going to spend that time to develop that for? Why bother? You're never going to get any value back out. Unless you have somebody here working with you, and then then that's a whole nother set of problems. But without some serious social engineering, you're not going to benefit from that.
And you have what, a $500 credit card limit anyway, so.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow, I think we did it, guys. So sorry, folks. I know I skipped a couple questions, but the ones that I'm. Oh, wait, last one. If you feel, no, it's another, why didn't you use this question? So I know I skipped a couple, why didn't you guys use this or that kind of questions, because we had too many. And frankly, the answer is the same to all of them, which is, hey, we had 24 hours and we just didn't know that, XYZ technology as well as they knew the ones that they used. So, guys, I just want to say, these are not necessarily, these are guest speakers that we're having. This is a great story and an awesome, just personal heroism story that I just thought was way too good not to have in the webinar program. I think you've heard Casey and Phil any number of times say that they don't necessarily endorse this approach. This is not a best practices webinar. This is an OMFG, we made it webinar. Please take it through the spirit in which it was intended. And guys, thank you so much. I mean, just super awesome. Casey and Phil, you guys rock. This was really fun. A lot of great Q&A. And I think the community would love to see like a top 10 greatest hits on payment providers, board from you guys that you update every 6 months. I mean, that would just be so awesome. So if you're open to that, let me know. We'll happy to host it for you and publish it somewhere if that would be useful. But otherwise, let me kind of turn it back to you guys for any kind of closing comments, and then let's let you go back to your day jobs.
All right. Just again, thank you very much to Peter and the Pivotal team for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to come in and do this webinar. We hope that people got something out of it and that they enjoyed it.
Yep, same thing. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time. Appreciate you, Peter. Appreciate Amy working with us. It's been a trip.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll look forward to having you guys back in the future. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you again on a webinar near you. We got lots more cool stuff happening this month, so go to spring.io/blog and or just look at the most recent This Week in Spring if you want to see what the upcoming webinars are. Thanks, everybody.